All right, welcome back to the MovieBabble Podcast. This week you've got myself and Nick, and it's been a while since we've had the regular MovieBabble Podcast. September's been kind of crazy, but we're back. We'll talk in a minute, but cinema is definitively back. Some of the box office totals this weekend. How are you doing, Nick?
What's going on, buddy? It has been a minute. I'm ready to talk about all the films with you. I've missed it. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's I feel like September, it worked out because September I think was a little bit slower in terms of just movies coming out, especially like bigger. This is gonna captivate just regular audience movies. Because we'll talk about it in a minute, but Dear Evan Hansen didn't really take the world by storm.
Ooh,
Uh,
all the wrong reasons it took the world by storm.
but there are some movies that did. So we're just gonna jump into the big one, and that is Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. Or I guess it's just Venom, Let There Be Carnage, but Venom 2 sounds good. So despite having kind of an obnoxious title, this movie had a $90.1 million, and I'm just gonna let that sit there for a second because I mean, so not only is that the largest opening weekend of the pandemic, like topping Black Widow, topping Shang-Chi, topping Fast and Furious, I guess would be the big three at this point. But that's a solid 10 million larger than Venom made in 2018 with no pandemic going on. Just unbelievable monies being earned this weekend by Andy Serkis and Tom Hardy.
Yeah, it's a head scratcher, isn't it? Because even the entire success of the first movie is crazy too. Because the movie got panned pretty widely. I think it's like in the 30s on Rotten Tomatoes. Not that Rotten Tomatoes is the end all be all with that kind of stuff, but yeah, it made like 800 million. No one really liked the movie. Except for me, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, and now we're Delta variant in full swing, and this movie breaks 100 million worldwide. It's really crazy. I don't know. I mean, I guess we might get into spoilers later, but maybe it has something to do with that end credit little sneak peek of things to come. Maybe like because I know Tom Hardy's been playing around a little bit with that. We'll get into that later, but yeah, this is it's a weird movie that I really enjoyed that I can't say is good. But yeah, I guess all the 90 Marvel people just love this movie. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting because, like you said, Venom was pretty universally panned. Like audiences and critics were on board. This was not a good movie back in 2018, but it had pretty solid legs, and it went on to make $850 million worldwide, which, for those of you at home that don't know, is more than any of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies except for the last
Oh
one.
my god, that's crazy.
um, and is just bonkers money for a movie that nobody really liked. So I'm curious to see what this one having, at worst mixed reviews from critics, but generally pretty positive reviews from audiences, just how much this will have in terms of legs. I think this does face a little bit more stiff competition because you do have No Time to Die coming up here next week, and then coincidentally enough, the original Venom went head to head with Halloween, and now this one will go head to head with Halloween Kills here in a few weeks. But I'm curious to see how long this one keeps chugging along.
Yeah, it's are movie theaters back? Maybe they are. They're about to be. I feel like because October is stacked, so I mean, we have a bunch of really great weeks coming up. So I imagine the legs on this one might not be as great, but who knows? It's everything Venom related has defied my expectations so far. So maybe it continues to do great business. But yeah, it's really kind of an amazing phenomenon because yeah, the first movie is not good, but I have a lot of fun with it because Tom Hardy said, "Great, I'm gonna take this role and just be weird, do weird Tom Hardy shit the entire time." He just refuses to be the dashing leading man he could be if he wanted to play it straight. He's just gonna look like shit the entire time. His hair is gonna be all messed up. He's gonna be sweaty. He's just going to be doing a weird Brooklyn accent or whatever he's doing as Eddie Brock. He's just making every non-conventional choice you can make as an actor, and then him just doing the voice as Venom, I think was just funny. The back and forth was the whole reason that the first movie worked at all, because it's a really bland superhero story, and it's kind of the same thing this time around, except they just up the ante with all of the Venom and Eddie Brock stuff, and it's really funny. And the movie is basically just like their gay romance together is pretty much. There's a whole scene where Venom just comes out at a rave, and it's hilarious. So they just, and it's funny because Tom Hardy has story by credits on this one. So they basically were just like, hey, Tom Hardy, go crazy. And he said, cool. And now it's the best romance movie of the year. And that's where we're at.
Yeah, I think I really liked this movie. It was way better than Venom 1, which, granted, is a pretty low bar. It's probably, no, I'd say it's more ridiculous than the first one, but it leans into it. And I think, like, the villain especially, whereas the first one, there was this whole complicated, like, he's trying to, like, merge science and symbiotes and stuff. Yeah. And in this movie, the villain, the explanation is, well, he likes to kill people.
It's great.
And that's what he does. Like,
yeah, he's a serial killer. That's all.
So yeah, I think this movie was way better than it had any right to be. Way better than the first one. And I think it works really well until about the middle of the third act, and then there's just like some left field kind of character choices that I'm like, wait, why are these people doing these things? But yeah, overall, Venom: Let There Be Carnage, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, the first movie, 10 out of 10 for me too. That first movie, it's a weird thing because the movie is very self-serious, except Tom Hardy knows what movie he's in, but everyone else is trying to play it really straight, and so he's just going crazy, jumping in lobster tanks, and it's great. But the rest of the movie is like kind of dour all around him, and it's this really weird, like self-unaware kind of mishmash of like tonal weirdness going on, and it's really fun to watch. I don't know, like it's kind of like a guilty pleasure in my mind. And this one, it says, oh, you guys liked all the weird Venom stuff, so we're just going to do that, and we're going to lean into it, and everyone's going to ham it up. And you're going to have Oscar winner Naomi Harris just yelling, reprising her role as what was the character name that she played for Pirates of the Caribbean? She looks exactly like her.
Pirate.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But so she's just hamming it up as what is her name? Shriek in this movie? Shriek. And then Woody Harrelson is also just he has like a pound of ham in his hand, and he's just chewing it like crazy. He's just chewing the scenery just so hard. And even Michelle Williams is like, I'm here for the paycheck, but I'm also gonna have a lot of fun in the two random scenes that I'm in this movie. And I do appreciate that, because this movie is really, like, it's the most by-the-numbers superhero movie in terms of just straight, like, plot, where it's like, bad guy gets loose, the hero has his ups and downs, they fight in the end, they're like mirror opposites of each other, they fight in the end, blah, blah, blah. But all the particulars just make this movie just so weird. I'm really happy it exists, because it's still not, quote unquote, a good movie, but I love watching it because Tom Hardy is just doing whatever he wants. Sony's like, yeah, go ahead, be weird, make out with Venom pretty much, and then all these people are just having a great time, and it's really infectious. I think this movie knows exactly what it is, and it's 90 minutes long, and I'm never gonna be mad at a movie that does that.
This isn't a good movie, but it is a great movie.
That's a great summation. That's exactly what I was going to say, yeah.
It's like, comparing it to the other two superhero movies recently, it's been Black Widow and Shang-Chi. Is it as good as Shang-Chi? Probably not. Will I watch it more than Shang-Chi? Almost definitely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we'll get to Shang-Chi a little bit later, but I just don't really like the second half of that movie at all. And it's a whole hour. And this movie is just an hour and a half of stupidity, and it's great. And it's Tom Hardy just trying shit on screen, and just once again refusing to be normal in a movie, and it's just so captivating. I can't tell if it's good. And then he has his. Did you see in the end credits? He has one of his rap songs through the end credits.
Yeah.
So this is a Tom Hardy project through and through, and it's just so weird. And I think Andy Serkis. I was about to say Andy Samberg, but Andy Serkis understood the assignment as the director and gave us kind of all the cheese that you'd kind of want. It's a very tonally consistent movie, which is you just really can't say that about the first one.
Yeah, and I think this movie hits a lot of the same notes that Blade hit way back in the day. Like that scene where Venom's at a rave just felt like something straight out of Blade.
Oh yeah.
Because Blade also goes to a rave, although he doesn't come out; he just kills people.
Yeah, this is the whole grungy '90s Marvel thing. I know Blade was really big then too, but yeah, there's just Venom has a different crowd of fans than a lot of the other Marvel stuff, and I'm probably not smart enough to figure out why that is, but it's just there's just a different crowd for it, and it's just a whole different thing. I would never be able to tell you if this is like quote unquote accurate to the actual character of Venom from the comics, but I really don't care. It's just so goofy and great. It's so stupid.
And I think Venom's kind of a weird character because Venom, came pretty long after Spider-Man was established and just like instantly took off. And Bane's the same way, kind of weirdly also played by Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like very grunge, like having to prove that it's edgy and talking about eating brains. He rides a motorcycle, so you know that Eddie Brock is cool. Just all that fun stuff. But yeah, I really like this movie. I think Carnage was a lot of fun too. Like his main focus is mainly murder. But I think like the way that they have all these PG-13 kills that are still pretty gruesome was handled really well. Like, that one in the trailer where he's like sticks his tongue down the guy and like eats him from the inside.
Yeah.
And just Carnage's whole prison escape was really fun to watch.
Yeah, you really don't see that from other superhero movies. And it was weird because I went to just see this at like a random movie theater, and I like showed them my ticket, and they say, "Oh, can we see your ID?" I was like, "Wait, is this movie R? Like, what's happening here?" And then I sit down, and it's like, "Oh, it's PG-13," but it is really gruesome as far as PG-13 goes. Like, it's probably they got their F-bomb in there too. It's like they did everything to make it as like rough of a PG-13 they could without going over and showing. Basically, they just don't show any blood in the kills. And that's how that's the difference between PG-13 and R now, I guess. But yeah, like so that tongue stuff is kind of creepy, kind of gross.
And you don't see any of the bodies after the head's been bitten off.
Oh yeah,
you just see the feet.
Like you just like Venom just discards them off screen, and you're like, oh okay, they're dead, they're done for. Yeah, a lot of people die. There's a lot of murder in this movie. I do appreciate that. It's just this movie just it knows what it is for so many ways, and I mean it's not the most compelling villain I've ever seen, but I admire this movie. He's like, you know what, fuck it. He's just a deplorable serial killer, and that's just all that's all the villain is. And then me with the low bar I have for this movie, I say, great, that's all I need to root against him. That's all. Like he deserves whatever fate he gets, and it's like there's nothing special to it, but it just works for this kind of movie.
Yeah, and what I really liked about the dynamic with the villains, because you have Carnage is the main villain, obviously, from the title, if you could tell.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
And then Shriek is his girlfriend, fiance, wife, who's also a villain, who is just like the redheaded kid from X-Men First Class, but she takes deeper breaths before she can.
It's true, yeah.
And I thought this was one of those movies where I thought it was like, oh, well, she's going to start off on Carnage's side. She's going to turn because he gets too evil. And they're like, no, she's just evil most of the time. Like, she's still trying to kill Venom at the end. So I appreciated that they stuck to that, but it's weird because there's one scene where, like, she's torturing or I guess it's not a scene, but it's part of the big battle. And so, like, Venom and Carnage are fighting, and she's fighting this cop that shot her and took her to a mental home. And like all of a sudden she's like, no, stop, Carnage, you're doing too much. And then he like smacks her, and then the next scene you're like, oh, I bet she's gonna try and kill Carnage. She's like, no, still killing Venom. So I was like, it was up until that point where I was like, all these characters make sense, even if they're really kind of dumb. And then they started kind of jumping around a bit. And I felt like some of the other side characters in that last battle were just, you could never really tell where the placing was supposed to be, like who is where and doing what, how much time has passed.
Oh yeah,
But overall,
there's no reason why Reed Scott and Michelle Williams have to be in this movie whatsoever. They're literally there just as the plot device to get to the final battle, and then so that Eddie Brock has something to fight for. No reason for them to be in this movie, but yeah, this movie is just so weird. I love because I don't know if you saw this interview with Andy Serkis where he was basically like, yeah, like Venom's a queer character, and it's how it is in the movie. Because I feel like in all of these big time superhero or franchise movies, the creator, or the writers, they throw in some subtext there, where they always have to dance around it, and for some weird reason, they never come out and be like, yes, this person's a queer character, and this is why. And Andy Serkis was just like, fuck yeah, like Venom's queer, and it's great. And they play around with it too. Like, not only do they have it in the rave scene, but they also play up the gender fluidity of it all with the symbiote, with him just going from body to body, and him going to Michelle Williams and being like, I really like this, and then going back to Eddie Brock. Yeah. So they play that up too, and it's just a lot of fun. I liked it. It kind of just knows it. Just they're like, we want to play around with this, and it makes sense for the symbiote. Like, I guess just that character in general. So I really like that. It was a nice little inclusion I didn't expect to see in a Venom 2 movie.
Yeah, it was. And I think along those lines, this movie did a good job of making Venom and Eddie feel like different characters. Whereas in the first movie, I feel like it was Eddie and then slightly edgier Eddie, where Venom was involved. But in this one, you're like, no, there is Venom and there is Eddie. And like, here's how they deal with each other. And so I think that's probably the best thing that this movie did better than in the first.
Yeah, I kind of just want Venom 3 to just be them vibing in that apartment for an hour and a half. You know, just make it like a romance. Just it's like a $10 million budget, then just like it's like a 3-act play of them in the apartment just yelling at each other. That'd be great.
So I kind of felt like the last conversation that Eddie has with Michelle Williams and Reed Scott almost felt like a serious goodbye to them. And then I think with the post-credit scene, which we'll probably jump into here in a second, it almost felt like they were kind of leaving part of the world behind, and then, you know, maybe moving on to something kind of new in Venom 3. I don't know if you got any of those vibes from.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, Michelle Williams is one of the best actresses ever, or I guess working right now. And they're paying her millions of dollars to stand there. So, like, either use her or don't, you know? Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll get into the whole spoilery end credit scene in a second here, but yeah, I mean, I have no idea what there could be endless possibilities for Venom 3 based on what they set us up for at the end there. So yeah, I agree. So
the first Venom, do you remember what the final post-credit scene in the first Venom movie was?
Isn't it? Is that the one with Woody Harrelson? He has the funny red afro, or is that
no?
That's like halfway. It's like they cut to black and then cut right to him. Okay, yeah. I don't remember what the actual end credit scene is then.
So the first end credit scene to Venom was our first look at Into the Spider-Verse. It was like that sequence where
that's right, yeah.
Miles finds Peter's body. So my expectations were pretty high. I was like, are we getting Spider-Verse 2? Or something along those lines. Yeah. And then we got the big scene. I feel like everybody's been warned that we're getting into spoilers here.
Yeah, spoilers.
But yeah,
jump ahead. Whatever. So, do whatever you want.
So Venom gets blipped or blooped or whatever you want to call it into the MCU verse. It seems like they're just kind of chilling there in a hotel room in the Venom verse, and then it's like a flash of yellowish light, and then all of a sudden they're in a different universe, and J.K. Simmons is back. I think he's probably played J. Jonah Jameson more than anybody's played Spider-Man at this point.
Probably.
And so he's back, and then there's a picture of Tom Holland on the TV as Spider-Man. Venom licks the TV because you gotta put that element of Venom being obsessed with Peter Parker.
Oh yeah, gotta have another instance of that tongue coming out. Yep.
Into the mix, but it I really like this scene for two reasons. One, it proves that Venom wasn't in the MCU, even though Sony kept insisting it. Before they're like, yeah, Venom is an MCU movie, and then Kevin Feige would be like, no.
Like, relax.
But now the fact that he's been blipped into the MCU proves that he wasn't to begin with, but now he is. So
yeah, I think it was totally I'm sure they've been working on the multiverse stuff for a while now, because like Feige and Marvel, they have all of this stuff planned out. They probably have the plans for the 2031 slate right now, but they won't tell us for years. But my guess was that Sony was just like, we're gonna make a Venom movie and let's see what happens, because there's no way like they originally made the first one with it, like, yeah, this is gonna be in the MCU, because that movie is just so weird and bizarre and has just nothing. It's totally different than any of the Marvel movies. And then I'm sure as talks progressed, because they had to update their deal with the Spider-Man character once again and all this different stuff. So I'm sure Sony came back to Feige and the rest of the Marvel brass and said, we have this idea. If you're going to do your multiverse stuff, let's bring Venom into the mix and all this different stuff. So I'm sure there was a bunch of deals in the back of this that made this all come together, because I'm sure they just wanted to make Venom its own thing. But now he's here to stay. Are we going to get Morbius too in the MCU? What happened? I feel like that movie is just never going to happen again now, right?
I keep forgetting about that movie. They didn't even play the trailer before Venom. Like, the one time you would expect to see that trailer.
Yeah, when's that movie supposed to come out now? Is it January?
January, yeah.
Oh boy. Shout out to Jared Leto, I guess.
But yeah, so Venom is here, sort of. I feel like it's gonna be one of those things where he's never gonna show up in an actual MCU movie, but they'll put him in like Spider-Man related movies every month.
That's probably what it'll be. He'll have his 5 minutes in this movie coming up, and then he'll get zoomed back into the Venom universe, whatever we're going to call it now, the Sony cinematic universe, I don't know. And then he'll just go back, and Tom Hardy will just jump in more lobster tanks, and we'll go from there. That's probably what's going to happen here. And it'll be a fun little nod. It'll be a fun little nod because they're doing all the Spider-Man nods in this movie, is my guess.
I want to see Topher Grace take on Tom Hardy's Venom.
That'd be pretty good. Both Venoms just chilling. And then, because no one likes that Venom, so this Venom eats that Venom. Make a little fun little thing. He's probably too busy with his, what's that ABC show he's on? Like home economics.
Like home,
yeah, he's probably too busy filming that. So right now to get involved.
But yeah, so you already kind of addressed it. But do you think this means Tom Hardy's Venom is going to be in No Way Home?
Yeah, he'll be there. I mean, they set it up right. Like I think it's just a matter of how much, and I feel like it's going to be. If they're going to avoid this movie being like an absolute clusterfuck, they need to have some of these appearances just be a few minutes and then they're gone. So maybe he comes in for one action sequence, he pops in, has some fun, maybe bites a head, and then some weirdness happens and he comes back to his own universe. That's probably what's going to happen. I don't know. Otherwise, I don't know how this movie holds together at all, honestly.
Yeah, and I think it's weird because Venom was introduced before the suit was. So Spider-Man's my favorite comic book character, and pretty much the only one I've ever like really read a lot of. And so like the whole thing is, most of Venom's interesting powers come from the fact that he like leeched them off of Spider-Man. And so this is why this Venom just like weirdly forms blobs instead of like swinging webs or, having spider sense or that kind of thing. So I think it'll be interesting to see how they handle like Venom already existing, and at this point having kind of patched up his relationship with Eddie Brock, but also being in love with Peter Parker because he's Spider-Man. So I'm kind of curious to see like what the whole Venom Peter dynamic is, especially since Venom's a good guy for most purposes at this point.
Yeah, isn't there a scene, I could be misremembering this, but isn't there like a little like cut of Tom Holland running through like a cafeteria and he has the Venom suit, like the black suit on?
See, it's a black suit, and that was my first thought. I was like, I wonder if he like Venom suits up, but they always like lie with what suits he's actually wearing.
Yeah,
like,
could just be CGI.
Like all the like Far From Home stuff was in some of his like Infinity War suits, and then all the Infinity War was like his classic suit. So I feel like they're just gonna hide whatever suits he's actually wearing until the thing actually
Yeah.
comes.
Ever since the Infinity War shot where it's all of the superheroes running through the jungle together that didn't show up in the movie, I don't believe much of what I see in an MCU trailer anymore, because they have the beat down where it's like the teaser trailer is to some downbeat music they took from somewhere because they haven't made the score yet, and then the second trailer is always what the movie will end up being, you know. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how been the mode for all of them. So it'll be fun. I'm really curious. It seems like this is kind of their, I don't know, not their new Avengers movie, but they're working on the MCU of like making more of these event type movies more often. And I don't know if that's gonna like blow up in their face or not because it becomes less special, or if it's gonna be really popular. My guess is it'll be really popular, but it's interesting.
But before we jump off of Venom and the whole multiversal thing, I think Tom Hardy getting blipped into the MCU was actually only the second really interesting reality bending thing Marvel did this week, because we had our first Marvel Star Wars crossover, which I feel really weird about.
Where did that happen? What?
In What If?
Yeah, I haven't been watching that.
A couple of the characters get blasted into Mustafar, and like Darth Vader's castle's in the background. And it lasts like 3 seconds, and it probably doesn't mean anything. But I was like, please, please do not put these things together.
That makes me cringe just hearing about it.
I was like, if I ever see Spider-Man pick up a lightsaber, I'm just gonna quit. No, let things be said.
We already have the Free Guy scene where he does all the Disney stuff, so I'm good with less crossover stuff for a
while. So yeah, hopefully they'll show some restraint. I feel like Kevin Feige will, as long as he's around, but I don't trust Avi Arad on the Sony side because he just likes to smash all of his spider things together. So
yeah, I wonder how those meetings go, where he just comes to Feige with all these ideas, and Feige just like pats him on the back, like, sure, guy, like, well, yeah, great, all right, see you later.
But let's move on. So that is Venom with a monster $90 million, just baffling amounts of money. And then we're gonna move on to another movie that opened this week on HBO Max and in theaters. So it only pulled in about 5 million in theaters, but again, it's also on HBO Max. And I feel like this is a film that would probably do more HBO business than it would theatrical, because it is the prequel to an HBO series. And this just doesn't scream like big screen experience as much as something like, Venom or Black Widow would. And that is the Many Saints of Newark, or Moltisanti for all my Italian friends.
Yeah, the big irony with all of this is that the Sopranos creator David Chase, the only way he was going to come back to the Sopranos world is if he could make this kind of theatrical experience, because he has this very interesting kind of strained relationship with TV, where he always wanted to make movies. But he wrote on TV for years, and he was like, the only way I'm going to make a TV show is to make the most non-TV show, which is how we got The Sopranos and how revolutionary it is. So it's kind of a bummer just to see his one thing where he's like, I'm going to do a movie, and now it's just everyone's just streaming it. It's probably on the HBO Max front page. It's probably right next to Sopranos, which is kind of a bummer for him. But yeah, it's the Sopranos prequel, which it's great timing for me. I actually just finished watching The Sopranos for the very first time, like a week or two ago. So I was actually really looking forward to this movie. But you're not much of a Sopranos guy, right?
No. So I have never seen any of The Sopranos. Not a single Soprano. But I was really excited for this movie. I like the trailer. Sopranos is one of those shows that I'm like, yeah, I need to get into that at some point. So I was hyped up for this movie Friday morning when I rolled in. And I don't know, I feel very conflicted about this movie, and I'm curious to see. So I've never seen The Sopranos before. You just finished this, to see if we have the same just kind of thoughts and critiques of it. But I did enjoy it. I had a good time. I think we'll probably both agree that the performances by Alessandra Nivola and Michael Gandolfini were really good. Um, I enjoyed that. There was a really nice Joe Pesci cameo that I just loved. But yeah, I don't know if you caught that at all. Did you?
Wait, he's in this movie? Wait, what?
So Ray Liotta's second character,
Right.
he's always getting the records. The second time he's holding a record, he's holding Joe Pesci's debut album, Little Joey Sure Can't Sing.
Oh, that's cute. I like that a lot.
And I died, and nobody else in the theater was laughing.
That's really fun. I like that a lot. I did not know that. I mean, I like that scene because he's like, this isn't jazz, and he just like throws it back in his face. But I didn't realize that was the Pesci album. That's really, really funny. I love it.
Yeah. So I'm curious, just what was your kind of general reaction to this as a Sopranos fan?
Yeah, my hot take on The Sopranos is that it's really good. It's just a really, really good show, and it's an amazing feat from David Chase, who I think either writes or co-wrote every single episode. There might be some he didn't, but it's never once does he doesn't glorify these characters ever. He makes it very clear at all times how much he hates all of these mobster guys, and yet you still end up rooting for them in one way or another, or laugh with the monstrous things they say, and it's really impressive. And it's all these great things based on it's like this like it has so much to say about masculinity and kind of where America's gone in the past couple of decades, and just so much stuff. And it's like the first mobster kind of piece of content where it's they all those characters grew up watching stuff like Goodfellas and The Godfather and stuff like that. So they're their own mobsters, but they're trying to emulate past mobsters from from movies and stuff like that. So it's this really interesting mix. But yeah, I too was really looking forward to this movie quite a bit, and I think it's very okay. That's where I stand. It's really tough because I think there's a really good movie in there somewhere. And honestly, it might have been better as a limited series. The stuff that this movie is trying to tackle, because it's trying to tackle kind of the U.S. response to the Vietnam War and rioting in cities, and how like the Italians and like these mobsters are taking advantage of like black people who are like thrown under the bus for all this violence. And it's this really interesting racial dynamic at play here, and then it quickly shifts to a lot of other stuff as well. And it's kind of vignette-y as a movie. There's just a lot of disconnected scenes that don't quite match up to each other. And I'm curious if this movie had some sort of studio meddling in it, because it's exactly 2 hours. On the HBO ticker, yeah. It's 2 hours and 14 seconds. So when you see something like that, it's clear that it had some weird kind of runtime that doesn't quite fit for theaters trying to roll over and clean up theaters for the next showing and show as many in a day as possible. Like it probably ran at like 2:23 or 2:10 or something weird, where it's like not those 15-minute intervals that theaters really like. And because of that, it feels like there's some connective tissue missing, because you don't quite understand character dynamics a lot. Like Leslie Odom Jr. is kind of he's kind of the head of kind of this racial divide that's in this movie, and he's really great in it. He's really good performance, and he's just an awesome performer in general. But the movie never really quite makes it clear why he's there, what's like at all. And you enjoy his scenes because he's a great actor, but it never really kind of shows its cards, and it kind of explains why he's even involved in any of this. And it's very confusing in that way. You kind of go through a lot of the scenes, and they're like, what are they trying to say here? And I had that feeling quite a bit throughout this.
Yeah, and I think it did very much feel like two separate movies, or something that could have been explored over a limited series, or even like a small miniseries. Because you have, you don't even see the majority of what was advertised, which would be Michael Gandolfini as young Tony, until about the 45-minute mark. You're still following uh, Dickie, and you're still following little tiny Tony will show up every now and then. And I was like, wait, what is this movie actually about? And the thing is, I like what it was about in the first half. I think the first half was the stronger part of the movie, in my opinion, because that is where you're playing with a lot of these ideas, like struggling with the Vietnam War, and looking at the African American side of things, and especially where I think that's where Leslie Odom Jr.'s character really shines, and just looking at the riots and how they're impacting the family, how the family's taking advantage of it. Um, and then in the second half of the film, a lot of that context and just discussion is
Mm-hmm.
gone. Like Leslie Odom Jr. is still in the movie, but he no longer lives in that same environment. Like you've skipped over so much that's happened, and there's no real resolution to all that build up. I just kind of kept wondering, well, where did it come to a head? Like, what does this actually mean? Before we just jump straight into the white flight.
Yeah, it's really weird because it's like it comes to a head all of like the kind of the violence in the city, and his character says, "I got to go on the run," and he leaves. And then there's voiceover from Michael Imperioli, so Christopher Moltisanti from The Sopranos, Dickie's kid, and then he's like, then Leslie Odom Jr.'s character just shows back up in the same neighborhood. He's like, "Yeah, I'm back," and he's just doing different stuff now, and it's very bizarre. And his motives change for reasons you can understand, but the movie doesn't really flesh them out particularly well. You can understand why he's mad at Dickie and all these and why he's doing what he's doing, but it's not a very strong arc at all, and it doesn't really connect to the first half at all. Yeah, it's just it's a very very mixed bag. I think the performances are really great in it though. Like Alessandro Nivola has just been he's a great actor who has never quite had a leading role like this before. But I think he's awesome. He's the best part of this movie. He's really really good. I would love to see kind of honestly a limited series with him as the lead character because I do like how this is not the Tony Soprano prequel, and I think people might get disappointed from that, but the way it follows the Dickie character, I think it does. For as like muddled as the movie is, you do understand kind of what leads young Tony to become the Tony Soprano we know of him in The Sopranos later on. Those seeds are placed in an interesting way. So yeah, a lot of the performances are really good in this movie, except for the guy who plays Silvio, who's very very bad. It's an SNL skit. It's John Magaro playing him, and he's a great actor. He was in First Cow, Kelly Reichardt's First Cow last year, and he was awesome in that movie. But he's very bad. He's very bad, very very bad in this movie. The rest of the impersonations, I mean, some of them are impersonations, but I think a lot of them work pretty well. Especially Vera Farmiga as Livia Soprano. I mean, if you haven't seen the series, so you don't really have the connection to Livia, but one of the best TV performances I've ever seen, and Vera Farmiga nails it in this movie. She is so good. So I loved her, and Corey Stoll as Junior is great too, and gets the mannerisms right without dipping into caricature. And yeah, Ray Liotta in two roles, doing a lot well. It was good to see him in here too.
Corey Stoll's character actually bothered me a little bit because he was one of the characters I understood his dynamics and the rest of the family the least, as someone who hasn't seen The Sopranos. And so there were a couple characters like that where I never felt like I understood how the hierarchy of the crime family was structured. Because at first it kind of feels like, coming into it completely blind, like they're all brothers and all part of the same family, and then you're like, oh no, it's actually John Bernthal and Corey Stoller brothers, and then Dickie is like cousin or something like that. And then I could never figure out, are they separate crime families? Are they like part of a larger organization? Like, what is Leslie Odom Jr.'s role? Like, what are they actually doing other than just like taking money from the same grocery store every couple days? So I was a little bit confused about the relationships with that, and then there was like a lot of resentment between Corey's character Junior and Dickie that I don't feel like was ever really fleshed out. Like, I don't know if it's a spoiler or not because I haven't seen the TV show, but it's a spoiler in this movie where Corey Stoll like falls, hurts his back, Dickie laughs at him, and then Corey Stoll's character has him killed. and I was like, well, that seems like kind of an overreaction. Like I don't I don't understand what's going on here.
Yeah, I loved that part of it, and it's probably not as fleshed out as it could be, but Junior Corrado is a very vindictive guy, and he gets very angry for little slights against him, and is known in like even the earlier seasons to overreact to when people make fun of him. There's a really good bit in the first season about how should I say this? How Junior likes to please his female companions, and there's a running joke on that, and he gets very, very furious with it, and it's really, really funny. So I like where that ends up because it's a very David Chase thing to do, where I think that is a really good. It's like it's so pointless. Like, why would you jump to that conclusion after just being after getting laughed at? But David Chase hates all of these people, and to see them act so stupidly for such little things, I think is very consistent with how The Sopranos works. So I do see what you mean, though. Like, out of context, if this is just a mob movie, you're like, wait, this is the third act? That's kind of weird. But I think it does really work. It works nicely just because it shows how, like, stupid the mob life is and how pointless and unnecessary it is. And Junior has a really good line, I think, in the penultimate episode, the last episode, that is a great capper to that as well in the series. But I won't spoil that for you. We'll leave that there.
Yeah, and I think that was probably my issue is the movie is I don't know what the payoff is, right? Like I understand Tony's arc in this movie, but I don't understand it in the grand scheme of things, which is, a lot of what this movie is like, this is how, Tony becomes Tony. I don't really know what it means to be Tony.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. This movie is balancing between telling its own story, which I think is a good idea, because the Dickie side of stuff is not really. It's reflected upon by Christopher and other characters. You get like allusions to it, but they don't really flesh it out. So I thought that was a really good idea for the prequel. But this movie is a ton of fan service, and it's like juggling back and forth between telling this story and also just like giving fan service to people who love The Sopranos. Like there are lines repeated word for word from the series that people really like, and they're very, very obvious and on the nose and kind of annoying in some instances. So yeah, it's this weird mix of it's kind of like a victory lap, like, hey, remember The Sopranos? That was great. We made one of the best shows ever, and then it's also trying to tell its own thing. So it's kind of weird, and that's why a lot of like the side characters pop up and have their like weird little moments that don't really work for a movie, but like they work for a TV show, because all those side characters are really well fleshed out in The Sopranos and like hold their own episodes for a lot of the time. So yeah, it's a weird struggle. Like the script feels more like a TV script condensed into a movie than anything else, and yeah, it really is all over the place. I think Alan Taylor, the director, is he directed a lot of crucial Sopranos episodes, so he knows David Chase pretty well. But he's kind of a shoot the script kind of guy. He did Thor 2. He did some Game of Thrones. Like he'll make it good if the script is good, but he's not really going to elevate it in any kind of way. So I feel like, I don't know, it feels like there's a lot of different weird stuff going on with the script and possible studio meddling here. It's a mixed bag for me. I think there's a lot of really good stuff in it, but nothing that I can't totally recommend it.
You forgot Alan Taylor's magnum opus, Terminator Genisys.
Oh, who could forget? It was me. I could forget.
Yeah, so I think I liked this movie more than I disliked it, and it definitely made me intrigued enough to be like, yeah, I should watch the show.
Yeah, Sopranos. Yeah. It's a good show. You may have heard of
it. Also, like, Billy Magnuson just really disappears into his role, because like I didn't realize that was him, and maybe it was just because he had his hair dyed black. But then I was looking at the cast list afterward, and I was like, oh, really?
There's a lot of really good prosthetics going on here. Like, he has the fake nose, and Vera Farmiga has she's a spitting image of Livia Soprano. I forget that actress's name off the top of my head, but I thought she was great. I would love to just see a movie with Vera Farmiga, honestly. But yeah, that's Billy Magnuson plays Paulie Walnuts, and it's a pretty good casting decision, and he's pretty spot on in terms of his impersonation of Tony Sirico. So it's there's more. I feel like you're going to be a big Paulie guy once you watch The Sopranos, because he's really really funny.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll have to see. But yeah, definitely it got me interested, which I think was kind of what HBO was hoping that this would do, because that is a very popular, very like critically loved show that they have complete control over. So it's always trying to get people invested in things they already have, which I feel like HBO has struggled to do, just in terms of original series and like Warner Brothers content, because even the Snyder Cut didn't just like blow away records like they were hoping to. And HBO Max has always been on the struggle bus.
Yeah, it's funny because I think there's been another reevaluation of The Sopranos, because it became such a big thing in quarantine, where people are like, all right, I'm gonna watch The Sopranos for the first time, or watch it again, and I was one of those people, obviously. So it kind of did hit this nice wave, but yeah, it clearly didn't do that well at the box office. So I hope people do check it out on HBO Max, though, because I think there is some good stuff in it.
But what about the home box office? And yeah, HBO Max is the one that like releases their numbers the least, so we may never know.
Yeah, we'll have no idea.
But there was another new release that I did not get time to check out, but I know you did, in quite an eventful screening.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us about Titane?
Yeah, Titane. I don't know. I'm gonna call it Titane just for the sake of my sanity. But yeah, I've been really looking forward to this movie for a very long time. This is Julia Ducournau's second film after Raw, which came out I think in 2016, which is a great movie. And obviously Titane has won the Palme d'Or this year. It's kind of making massive waves on the festival circuit for one, how good it is, and also just how insane it is, and can confirm very insane. But yeah, I had an eventful weekend with this movie. I saw it twice. The first time was Thursday night, because it was the movie I was by far looking forward to the most this weekend. So I sit down, and the movie starts, and the subtitles aren't really working. So the only time you can actually see what people are saying is when two people are talking in a scene. So they have like the one line, and then they have the second one below it, and you can only see, they cut it off somehow, so you can only see the top line. So when there's only one line of dialogue, you can see nothing. So people are just talking in French, and I have no idea what's happening because I don't speak French. But it was such a weird thing, and it was just me being maybe stupid too, who knows, but it's just such an amazing visual experience, this movie, that I still sat through the entire movie, even though the subtitles weren't working, because it is such an amazing visual experience that you can basically glean everything you need to know about what's happening to the movie and these characters based on just the visuals alone, and how like they're really strong physical acting as well in this movie. And it's honestly, you can watch it as a pseudo silent film in that way, and it was really effective, and it worked really well for me the first time around. But yeah, it was very weird, just me on Thursday night just sitting there, and like immediately someone spoke in French and no subtitles came up, and so someone like walked out to talk to the manager. It's like, oh, okay, this will be fixed, I'm just gonna sit here, and then nothing kept happening. So I was like, oh, like what's happening? Then more people went out to like talk to the manager and came back, and still nothing happened. So I was just sitting there. I was like a half hour into the movie, and I was like, well, I'm enjoying myself so far. And there's a lot of scenes that go along that don't have a lot of dialogue, so why not? Let's just sit here. So it's just me not knowing what characters are saying, just watching this French movie for an hour and 45 minutes. But it was a great way to spend my Thursday. And then, of course, I go out and then talk to the manager afterwards, and they were like, oh yeah, why didn't you come out? We got it to work on another screen. You could have watched it there. And I was like, oh, great. Thanks for letting me know that, manager. That was great. I wouldn't have had to sit there. But no, I really enjoyed it, and I think it does speak to like the power of this movie, that you can just sit there, not know French, just watch the images and the way that it's the kind of the shot composition that Ducarneau is working with here, and it works so well. But I saw it today with subtitles, so I understand what was happening this time for the most part. And not only did it confirm a lot of what I was watching just through the visuals, where I could infer a lot of the dialogue that was being spoken, but it also kind of got home that this is a really terrific movie. Certainly not for the faint of heart, and I honestly don't even want to say a lot about what happens in this movie, because it is such a, wow, you can't believe this until you actually see it. Like, what happens in this movie goes for broke in the first 30 minutes, and it's insane. Just a lot of kills, a lot of goop, a lot of grossness, a lot of hilarious moments. This is just a very bizarre, wild experience, and it's a lot like, so Raw. Have you seen Raw, her first movie?
No.
Okay, so it's her first movie. It's this cannibal story where this girl goes to vet school in her freshman year, and she turns into a cannibal and starts eating people, and it's this really gruesome,
as one does.
It's this really gruesome story, but it's also this crazy allegory for her sexual awakening as a young woman. And so it's like this crazy, heightened, satirical way of showing this very personal thing, and in doing that, it shows just how scary these kind of transformations can be for a person, and kind of almost like how non-human it can feel to like go through all this stuff, and it works tremendously. And it's kind of the same thing here too, where it's a very it's weirdly touching for how disturbing it is, but it's kind of working the same line where it's this very heightened, satirical, and like borderline hilarious. I think that's kind of like lost in all discussion of this movie, because it's very harrowing, but it's also just very absurd and funny in a lot of instances. But it's the same kind of thing where it's these people grappling with being in control of their bodies. It's a trans story as well. It's really fascinating. It's about how you can hold trauma with you throughout your life, and how you pass it on to others, and what you do with it, and how it impacts basically everything you do throughout life. It's a very fascinating, fucked up movie that I don't really want to.
Nice.
I don't want to say much more about, but there's a car involved. There's a lady. Things, and it ensues from there. It's just a very bizarre movie. It's one of my favorites of the year, and it's very, very bizarre, and it's worth all the awards it's winning. It's fantastic. And Julia Ducarneau, after this movie, she's just like vaulted herself into like one of the best international filmmakers working right now. So I implore everyone to check it out. Definitely a movie that, since it's just playing in random like multiplexes, like random people will just stumble into, like, oh, what's this movie? And they see the first couple scenes and they're like, oh my God. Like, they're just not prepared at all for what this is. And I'm sure there will be some backlash to it because of that, because people have no idea what they're watching, because it's so kind of transgressive. But it's really good. I really, really liked it, and it's fucked up. So I guess it's kind of a me movie in that sense. So it's really good.
Yeah, I just want to add that there were no subtitles in Venom, There Be Carnage, and I still understood what was going on.
That was really good. Bravo to you.
So that's all the new stuff, but we do want to touch on some of the old new stuff that came out in September. So let's just go with the one taking the world by storm, Dear Evan Hansen. Lots of quality memes coming from this movie, from everything I've heard.
Amazing memes.
Not a very quality movie, and I have no intention of proving or disproving that by actually watching it. So
yeah, don't see it. I'm here to tell you that it's terrible. The meme of Evan Hansen, just like all of his veins popping, like he's like, it's funny because it's like supposed to be the emotional scene in the movie, but it just looks like he's shitting his pants, or he has he's constipated, and it's so funny. It's really, really funny. It's kind of, I feel bad because that's like Ben Platt's a really good singer, but the way he sings, there's just a lot of throat veins going on. So it's just kind of off-putting. And especially with like the whole thing with this movie is that Ben Platt looks like he's 50 years old in high school. And like all of that doesn't help at all. Like he's just super veiny and like screaming at like little children. And it creates this bizarre unreality, because it looks like, because basically, I mean, I guess the kind of like the log line of this movie is that Ben Platt's character Evan Hansen, he's been instructed by his therapist to write a letter to himself, because he's on medication, he's struggling with depression, all these different things. A suicidal teen takes his letter and then takes his own life, and then that teen's parents think that Evan Hansen was one of his friends because he had the letter on him when he died. And then Evan Hansen goes along with it because he's a sociopath, and that's the movie. And it's so bizarre because he is doing awful things to these people, and it's just so weird. And then just him looking like he's 40. It's just not. It's been low hanging fruit, but it's just so weird. Like, I'm okay because like Caitlin Dever is in this movie, and she's what, like 23, right? 23. She was born in 96, so she's 24 or 25 or whatever. And so she's in this movie too. So she's not in high school. But the way they like work with like Ben Platt's like hair and stuff like that, it looks like he has a receding hairline. It just like they tried to age him down but inadvertently aged him up. So it just looks like it's just this weird, and he's taller than everybody too. So it looks like he's just this weird adult who's just being really cruel and awful to all of these teenagers, and it's really weird. It's really, really weird. And then the plot itself is just so it's just wrong in so many different ways. Like there's a dance number. So there's like Evan Hansen goes over to Connor Murphy is the kid who commits suicide, and he goes over to the Murphy's household, and Amy Adams, continuing her very tragic run of trying to get Oscars, is just in this movie. But goes over to her house and explains like this made up time that they had together, and like explain this great afternoon that they had, because she wants him to share memories about his life, because they don't really know him because he was struggling a lot. And then Evan Hansen has this family friend who says like they totally think that you guys were lovers. And they go on. It's this weird like gay panic joke that the guy continues throughout the movie. He's like, "Oh yeah, you guys were gay together," and it's like, wow, I thought we left this kind of joke in 2005. Like I didn't realize we were still doing this. And then there's this really bizarre dance number where it's Connor Murphy is like. They have that the family friend is writing more fake letters for Evan Hansen, so it shows like they had correspondence, and they have like Connor Murphy singing them, like he's just back and he's like singing all of the letters to each other, so he's this dead kid singing it. And there's this one like they try to make it a joke where the guy adds about how like Evan Hansen was like touching his nipples and shit like that. It's so off-putting. It's like, wow, you guys did this with this movie. Like, isn't suicide hilarious? Like, it's just so wrong-headed. It's just very bad, which is weird because Steven Chbosky is a director that I kind of like. He made that Wonder movie, which was really, really kind of cute, and also Perks of Being a Wallflower, which people really like as well. He goes after these big, cry teenage movies or kid movies. And most of them are, I think, kind of successful, so I can understand why he took on this project, because it deals with a lot of like troubling teen issues. But it is a big oof. It's tough, and I've already spoken more about it than I want to. So let's move on.
All right, we won't mention it again.
It's very bad. We must banish Dear Evan Hansen.
So the biggest movie of September in the previous biggest pandemic opening. Before Venom came and ate it, is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I really like this movie. It like made me excited to watch a Marvel movie in every way that Black Widow didn't. And maybe it's just because Black Widow was bad and I was like, oh, this is like actually interesting. But we were talking a little bit before we got on. I think we both agree that the first half is a lot stronger than the second half. There's a lot of really inventive fight sequences in the first half of the movie, I think. There's also like the most sexual tension we've ever had in a Marvel movie, in this like river dance scene at the very beginning.
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah. Yeah, I like this movie overall. I'm giving this movie a thumbs up. What about you?
Yeah, I would say thumbs kind of up. Like definitely not in the middle, but like this is a podcast, so people can't see me, but my thumb's like kind of diagonal.
It's like 75
Yeah,
degree.
it's. I thought it was fun. Like I think the first hour, I was like, wow, this is different for Marvel stuff. I mean, it's not totally different, but it's just like Simu Liu is doing really cool action, and there's that awesome bus sequence that you see in the trailer, and the full thing is just so cool. It's really, really cool. And the dude from Creed 2, who has the sword arm, is fighting him, and that was really fun. And it's just awesome action. And then there's that other really cool scene after, like when they're doing like the battle royale stuff, like right after that, where Tony Leung's guys come and try to like take Simu Liu and the sister character. It's the action is just so cool, and I'm like, oh, this is actually like doing different stuff. And then Ben Kingsley shows up, and nice. the movie takes a turn from there. It's just I thought the last hour kind of sucked of this movie, to be honest. It's just such a departure, and it's just gray, like stuff. Like you can't really tell what's happening. It's just gray background and rubble, and then like these weird soul demon dragons are fighting, and it's very bizarre. So it's just it's weird because then Ben Kingsley is like a very important plot point to like get this like the second half of this movie going. And I like Ben Kingsley, and I enjoy that character because I'm one of those people who actually likes Iron Man 3. And this is the corrective, obviously, to the Mandarin character, right? But it's just so different, and it kind of goes into annoying Marvel CGI schlock that I just don't really care for. So it was kind of a bummer, but the first hour is terrific.
Yeah, I think the first hour is really strong because you do have those two really different action sequences. Like I think where they're fighting on the side of the building, like on the construction.
Oh, and the scaffolding.
Was probably my favorite action sequence, and then of course the sexually charged fight between Tony Leung and the mom. I can't remember her name. Just like having that whole water dance, and then I think the conflict between Shang-Chi and Tony and the Mandarin is really strong in that first half, where it's like, here's these people that definitely don't want to kill each other, but they also like definitely hate each other and want to fight at some point. So I think that's really strong. But yeah, then it becomes like this whole. I'm pretty sure they go to another dimension, through a water portal, and then they're fighting like soul-sucking dragons, and it definitely loses a lot of that momentum that it had going for it in the first half.
Yeah, but at least Awkwafina is there just being delightful the entire time. So it smooths out some of the edges. And you have Michelle Yeoh, who comes in to make it fun. But yeah, Tony Leung, what a guy. I love that. It's just, well, the thing that like people now know him as this character from this Marvel movie when he's been like one of the best international actors ever, maybe, is really funny. But I hope this kind of introduces people to him, and they're like, oh, I want to go check out all of his Wong Kar-wai movies and all the other cool stuff that he did overseas, because he's awesome, and he just totally elevates this character.
Yeah, and I really liked Ben Kingsley as well, because I really like Iron Man 3, kind of like you do.
It's so good. And so people need to stop hating on it. It's so much fun.
It was cool when he came back, and then he has a really good like joke in the middle of that end battle, like, you're doing like the classic like random dead bodies, we don't care about Pan, and then it like pauses on Ben Kingsley, and he's like, calm down, it's just a performance, and then goes back to playing dead.
Yeah, I mean, it's Ben Kingsley, right? Like, he's great and everything. Yeah. But yeah, it's just like, it really is like a line in the sand. Like, as soon as he shows up, like, the movie just takes a turn, and it's more random, get from A to B plot stuff that I don't really care about when that shows up in Marvel movies. So.
And Wong, like, slowly becoming the most important character.
Yeah, it's true.
He's everywhere now.
Yeah, he's just out there. What did you think of Simu Liu? Since this is kind of like the first time we've seen him.
I was disturbed because, like, we're to the point where Marvel heroes are younger than I am, so I feel old. I'm only 23, almost 24, but according to my math, he was born in like 1998, and it's like, so that made me feel old, even though he's older than I am in real life. But I was like, gross.
Wait, I'm
This
seeing
hero
I'm
character
seeing I'm seeing 89. So I think you're good.
Yeah, well, the actor is, but the character was
Oh, I
like
see. I got you.
born
Yeah,
after I
yeah.
was. So I was like, ugh, this is what it feels like to
Yeah, well,
to be an adult.
I turned 20. I
But
turned
no,
26 soon, so that's not good for me either. So,
I really liked him. I think he brought a lot of charisma to it, but not in the usual Marvel way where it's just like an obnoxious amount of charisma. But where like he's a very like self-assured character. Like he knows who he is, and he's funny and fun without just like having to quip constantly. But I think he and Aquafina had really good chemistry, just going throughout this movie, because a lot of this movie, kind of starts off as a buddy movie and then devolves into a group buddy movie versus dragons. But I think all the material they had with just one on one was really solid.
yeah, I really like him. Like I had never seen. He was on like this Canadian TV show that I had never seen before. I forget what it's called. But I never.
Kim's
Yeah,
Convenience.
that's right. I had never seen that. It was the first time I've seen him, and he's fun. Like obviously everyone's making like connections to like Jackie Chan and all that stuff with like his fighting, but he really pulls that really nicely where he's using like his body and all these contorting it and like using all the stuff around him to fight, and it's really fun. And like I think that kind of just by itself separates him from all of the other Marvel characters, right? Because they're all just quip, shoot a gun, and then that's kind of it, right? They all just quip around, and he is a little different, and he is a fun presence. So I'm hoping it seems like him. I mean, from the end credits, it's him, the Hulk, and what's her name, Brie Larson, I can't,
Yeah,
Captain Marvel. Like, I
Marvel.
can't even think of her name. Jeez, but it seems like they're kind of positioning them to be the next big things in Marvel. So I'm here for it.
Yeah,
I love Simu Liu. I think he's cool.
and I like that this was one of the first like really street level movies we had for the most part, and until we get to the other
Until the
divisions,
Soul
but,
Sucking
like,
Dragons, they had to even it out in the
yeah.
second half, right?
For most of this movie, like he doesn't have powers. He's just a dude who knows karate and
Yeah,
like martial arts really, really well. And I really like that element of like the excitement of five guys fighting on a bus, because we really don't get that kind of smaller scale action in Marvel movies a whole lot anymore.
yeah, and then his sister played by Mang Zhang, I think is her name, but she's
Yeah,
cool. And then the end credits scene where the 10 rings are coming back, it's like cool. Like I want to see more of
yeah,
her. She was awesome. She was really really cool in this movie.
yeah. I think it's easy to forget that like the MCU started with Iron Man fighting terrorists, and
Yeah,
it's nice to, even if we're getting a very exaggerated version of that with her character, it's nice to at least get back to that a little. And even like the the fighting ring they had in was it in Macau was really cool. Like I really enjoyed that aspect of like the criminal underworld of the MCU, where not everyone is trying to like find magic rocks. Some people are just out here to make money.
yeah, right. And they're just fighting Abomination. And then I love that
Her
because Wong is just
yeah.
told him to take a fall to get the money. That's so funny.
And I like the karaoke scenes with Wong at the end.
Oh yeah, that was the Hotel California bit throughout
And
was really funny to me.
I really like, I don't know the actor's name, but like, so the sister's sidekick that meets him on the elevator when they go to Macau
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
is like the fight announcer or whatever. I really liked his character.
Yeah, I could look up his name, but I've seen him in stuff, and I was like, I like him. He just shows up and does fun stuff in movies. I can't remember where I saw him, but yeah, he was cool.
Yeah. Oh, he was in a Godzilla versus Kong, but I don't remember what his character.
Oh, that's right. I was like, I remember seeing him recently, but
But yeah, that is Shang-Chi, and we're not done with Marvel. We've still got more Marvel this year.
we always got more Marvel. There's always more.
uh, but yeah, so I think the last thing we'll kind of touch on is another HBO Max theatrical release, and that is Malignant. which I have not seen because it came out in September, which was just nuts. But I know you saw it, didn't you?
I did, and I love this movie. And it's so bad, but I think it's great. So this is James Wan just out here, and I was looking up the past 7 movies he's done have been attached to a franchise, which is crazy to me. Like he is just out here going from Saw to like Aquaman and the Insidious and obviously the Conjuring movies.
Furious 7.
Yeah, it's just this crazy run of movies where he's just been doing blockbuster stuff for Warner Brothers, and they've tapped him as just one of the guys to kind of shepherd all of their big projects. And I mean, I think there's people who quibble with like his films themselves, but all of them make money and they all do really, really well. So this is kind of the first time in a while where he's just been like, I kind of want to try something that's not a part of something. And we have Malignant, and it's hilarious. It's one of those. So some people just think this movie's flat out bad, but I see this as a finely crafted like spoof movie. I think this movie knows exactly what it's doing. It might not be a spoof, but it's like a very clear horror comedy. This movie is having a lot of fun with what it's doing. And there's been a few like clips that have going on Twitter where like every time someone in the movie makes they make a startling revelation, they say it out loud to one of the other characters after first of all, it's already very obvious based on what's happening in the movie that it's overkill when they like say like, oh, like blah blah blah, and it's like supposed to be this big revelation, but it's like, yeah, we already know. It's like, we don't need you to tell us again. But then they play it up even more where like the reverse shot of the person reacting to it, like they'll like zoom in on their face and be like, whoa, this is amazing. And if you don't understand like the comedy in that movie, like it's like, I can't help you. Like this movie is like clearly trying to be this goofy thing. And so it's just, I don't even know how to describe this movie. So this Annabelle Wallis is the lead character in this, and she starts getting visions of this kind of shadowy figure that is killing people, and she's like paralyzed in these moments, and she's like transported to where the killings are happening. And so there's this big like thing with they team up with the cops to try to figure out who's doing it, and it's James Wan kind of riffing on giallo movies where there's a little bit of mystery, and they have like their murder weapon, and it's kind of a little bit of a cat and mouse game the entire time. And it's so goofy and very, very stupid. And then the third act happens, and it's the most gloriously stupid thing I've ever seen in my life. Well, maybe not, but it's really funny. There's like I don't even want to describe it, but the third act is just like hold the fuck on and just like let the movie do what it's doing, because it is so unhinged and so outrageous. Like I am so amazed that the Warner Brothers let James Wan like do what he does in this movie. Like it's so stupid, and I had a great time. So yeah, I don't want to say much more than that, because it is such a joy. I think it is so self-reflexive, and it knows exactly what it's doing. And like it's kind of like a throwback to like a Frank Henenlotter movie. Like it's just really goopy and weird and funny. It has a lot to do with like that. And there's one plot point specifically, which I would give it away. But it's just this really wacky, bizarre thing, and it's really hilarious. I had so much fun with it. So I hope people check it out. It's just so stupid.
Nice. Well, that is Malignant, and that is this week at the box office. Well, really this month at the box office. So we'll be back with October. October is quite the slate. So next week alone, we have some heavy hitters. We have obviously the big one, No Time to Die. We have Lamb coming out next week. We have The Muppets Haunted Mansion coming out on the 8th as well. Like, you could not have a more stacked box office weekend than those 3 movies. But yeah, so we've got a lot coming up. Halloween later in the month. Last Night in Soho and French Dispatch.
Dune too, yeah.
Dune, yeah. So we will be back next week talking about No Time to Die, as well as some of the other ones. And remember, you can always check us out online at MovieBabble.